Hello and welcome to this course in particle effects in Maya, and we'll be using Maya and Adobe After Effects to create some particle animation to be composited into your scene. So this is the sort of thing we're going to do. It's a simple particle effect that we'll add, and then we will take this into Adobe After Effects. Let me just stop this as it's stopping playback, and we'll basically be creating this scene here. So by using the particle effects that we've created in Maya along here, we'll be giving this still animation a bit of life, and then we'll be using a rain filter within Adobe After Effects to add this rain effect behind it. And so the final output will be something along the lines of this, which gives it fairly realistic waterfall effect over the top of the image that we've already got laid down there. So I'll be using that base back waterfall as a kind of grounding block for our particles to give the illusion of water movement. So let's jump into, let's just have a look at our assets first. Right, the first thing I've got is an image here, and this image size is 1200 by 1600. Just go to image size, 1600 1200 height. So we bear that in mind when we create our animation or our sequence in Maya. Although saying that, the waterfall that we'll be creating in Maya will be alphaed anyway, so we can move it around within After Effects. So if I jump back into Maya now, I'm just going to close this scene, and we'll just open a new scene. Remember, we're trying to get this type of look. I've actually done two waterfalls. There's a waterfall one here, which is like a thinner stream waterfall. But the way that I did it is exactly the same for both, so I'll only have to show you one, and you should be able to create this second waterfall using my example. Okay, so what I'm going to do is obviously set your project, so make sure you go to Project New and then set it as a project, and then we're going to go to a new scene, and then all I'm going to do is come up to the tab here, come down to End Dynamics, and I just want to create a particle. So I want to create an emitter, like so. Let's have a look at the emitter so far. What I come down here is I'm going to set this to 300. Actually, I'll set it to 200. We don't need it that long, and that gives us 200 frames of animation, which equates to about 8 seconds, like 24 frames, 25 frames. Obviously, if you're an American, you're working, you want to set 30 frames a second. Well, 30 frames is per second. So let's have a look what's happening to our particle at the moment when it's been brought in with no changes. Something strange. The emitter type, let's have a look and play around with this. I'm just going to open Outliner up to make it all a bit more obvious what's going on. There's our particle, and there's our point emitter, which we've called water there, and emitter type is directional, which is fine. If I put it as omni, it will fire out from everywhere. And surface, you can add it to a surface, but for this volume, you can set the volume to whatever shape you like there, but we want, for this, we want it directional, so it will come out as a straight line. It's my cache clearing there, so it's just going to come out as a straight line, but that's not what we want, because it's coming out kind of like water, like these round blobs. If I do a render and make sure that I've got it on mental ray. If mental ray is not an option in your box, remember you need to come up to Windows, Settings and Preference, Plugins Manager, scroll down to Maya there, and make sure these are checked. Maya to mental ray, MLL. Just make sure that's checked, and then you'll have the option to come across to mental ray. So just leave it as default for now, that will be fine. And I'll just do a quick render of that scene there. That's what we've got, which is not what we want. So it's pretty easy to fix. What we need to do is we need to change our type. So if you come down to the NParticle shape, we've got particle render type as cloud, put it to multi-streak, and then go back to the end of your animation and fire it out. Now that's looking a bit more like it, especially if I hit the render again. We're starting to get there. You can see it starting to break up, do these little streaks. So, but it's not going down. So what I need to do is select my particles, come up to my fields, and I just want to dump a gravity field in there. That gravity field, as you can see, the arrows are pointing down, which means that it's going to affect the particles and push them down. And this is exactly what we want to happen, because we want the particle to flow out from the top directionally this way, and then we want the gravity to push it down. So the gravity field can be adjusted over here. Magnitude is 9.8, which is roughly Earth's magnitude. You might want to increase it, decrease it for more effect of gravity, but now that's perfect, so we can leave it. So now if I go back to the beginning and I run the animation, you can see it's now running down forever. And I'll pause that, and as we're running off frame, I can run it down forever. I don't need to stop it or anything, because the frame goes off. So let's do this. So there we go, we're going the right direction now with it. So next thing is this color, which is a bit odd. So if I go into the name of the particle or particle shape, we go down to the shading. I'm going to change this shading, so I'm going to click here, and I'm just going to change it to a darker color. So I tend to find this works better. And then this one over here, I'm going to go into a blue, but a really light blue, like that. Now let's do a render of that. I'm trying to do a render at each stage so you can see, and that's right, so it's starting dark and it's coming down to that lighter colour. You can make it lighter still if you wanted to. All depends on what you're compositing onto. I'll do it white for now. You can also move these bars along to affect it quicker. So that will do. Right, now we've got an opacity slider here, which will add a bit of randomness to the opacity of each of the particles. So what I'm going to do is this slide, at the moment you can see it's just going one direction. If I click in there, I can drag this down, and it's basically going to affect that's going to be solid and then that's going to be clear. So I'll put it about halfway. Input, this is over a period of time, as opacity scale input age has got something to do with that. And I'm going to just turn the randomization up. And now we're starting to look a bit more, so some parts are more opaque than others, so you're starting to get this kind of nice watery type of look. It might look just like a white and grey, but as soon as we put this onto something else, it will look really cool. So the next thing is we need this to be a bit bigger, because at the moment it's not stretching far enough. As you know, our waterfall was kind of this direction on, but it was much larger. Well, I'm going to duplicate these in Adobe After Effects anyway, but we still want to get it a little bit nearer. So if I click my particles again, down here you've got things like tail fade. You can play around with this. It's just the end parts just fade, which is what you kind of want. So I'm going to leave that. But the tail size you can increase. and I choose lighting as well. So with that done, we'll click it. It might be a bit too much, that it's not a big waterfall, but I haven't finished my settings, so I might come back to that. We got in the water attribute here, the point emitter. We've got spread as well. Which actually isn't affecting it. We got speed. Speed random. That's quite nice. Gives it this kind of random speed, which is what you probably would get. What you do get. And then we got max min distance, and this is for spreading. So that's quite good. That's quite nice. I'll just stop it and play it. So that's given us a nice spread on water there. So if I just pause that now and do a render, that's what we're getting. Tails are too big, so I need to go back into that tail size and just bring that tail size down a bit. But I also want to bring up my count a bit more and my radius. And now I'll play this back. It's quite evenly spread. Let's do a render of that. And that's what we're getting. And that's good enough for what we need. I can turn depth soft on, adds a little bit more. Color acumen makes it a bit brighter over the top, and this will do, but play around with these settings, try and get it to look a bit better than that. And what I do now is I'm just going to render this, so I only want 200 frames, so I'm just going to come into my render settings here. I'm now going to put it on production. Actually, I'll do a test with it on production. There we go, that's production, so a lot better there. I forgot. Sometimes I leave it just on production from the beginning because it's not going to be taxing the memory, and it's going to be quick to render anyway. So let's just render this out now. So I'm going to go to Common. I'm going to now go to TIFF, so it's image format TIFF. I'm going to name this Water 3, and because I've got Water 1 and 2 already, I'm going to set this size at 1200. 1600, which was the same as our image, by 1200. I'm going to set the resolution, leave all that the same. Need to make sure that this is set to name underscore number extension, and I need to set the frames, end frame to 200, start frame from 1, and close that off. And at this point I just want to get my camera up, so I'm going to just go to camera settings, resolution gate, and might need to go to overscan, so I'm going to bring up my outliner, click the perspective, come down to the overscan, fit resolution gate, and that gives me more than enough. I know that my waterfalls start down about there, so I'm going to bring it up maybe to about there, trying to get the same kind of line. I don't need to bring it in as an image plane or anything because it's not that essential. Okay, it's about there, that's about right. At this stage also I'm going to select my particles and I'm going to go to solver, initial state, set from current. This means that it won't do from a start point. I can just put it over here and it will start playing from there. Now before I render, I'm just going to do a quick cache of these. It's going to create a new cache. Like so. And that's good. Now I can render out. So now I'm going to hit my render button, come down to rendering and render and batch render. And now these will appear in your Maya folder and in the directory that you created. So I'm just finding mine now. They will start appearing here under obviously water 3. So where's my water 3? There. And you can see that it's now starting to render these. It's on water 3 number 7. So there they are. And all these other ones are ones that I did before. So I'll render these out, let these render to 200 frames, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, my rendering's all done now. I've got my 200 frames out on water 3, which we set up. There it is. So what I need to do now is I just need to save this scene. So I'll save it off as water 3 and save that. And now I can close Maya and close this down as well. Alright, now what I want to do is create a folder where I've got all my base elements. So I'm just going to right hand click here and just create a folder as you normally would, and waterfall training. There we go. Okay, and I am going to put my assets in here, so I'm just going to create another folder and call it assets. And I'm going to put in my static JPEG. I'll just delete these two AVI files that we created because we're going to start afresh, and I'll also get rid of this, not save that. Okay, so now I want to open up my images folder in my Maya directory, and I want to grab my waterfall sequences. I've got them all in here, so I'm grabbing them all, just going to drop them in there. So I've taken them now out of the Maya folder, I've put them in my assets folder in here. So if I'm happy with this size, I probably wouldn't be. I probably want to go for a 1280 720, that's 720 HD for showing on video. But for this example, just to show you how to comp these waterfalls in with this static shot, it's going to be fine. I'll just drag it straight in. So now I've got that set up, I'm going to open up Adobe After Effects. Okay, so here we've got Adobe After Effects opened. Nothing's in here, we're nice and empty. Make sure that you've got this kind of setup. And I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Import File. I'm going to jump to my desktop and grab into my assets file. And the first file I'm going to load in there is going to be my base file. And the reason I do this is because as soon as I drag this in here and drag it into the render, it will set the size up to the size of this picture. So my composition size will be the size of the picture. Basically the movie size. If I brought in something that was smaller, then you would have to resize the settings. So this is why I bring this in, so it'll automatically set it up. I don't have to worry. Now I click up here and I drag and drop into here, and now it will set this up and do it over a certain amount of frames, which I could increase. I could increase the frames by coming into composition settings. If it's working, which it decided to play silly buggers. There we go. Sometimes does that. So yeah, I could increase the duration of the clip. At the moment we've got it, I think it's 1 second or something. So I'll leave it on that. That'll be fine. Open that up. Now I'm going to drag my sequence in. So I'm going to go to File, Import, File, and now I'm going to, we'll start with that waterfall 3 because that's the one we worked on, and the rest is pretty obvious then. So I'm going to search through to find my waterfall 3, which is the start of the file, is there. And I make sure that TIFF sequence is checked, otherwise it'll only bring in that frame, and we want to bring the whole sequence. So then I click Open, and straight unmatted, that's what I want. Click OK. Now it's appeared here. I click this and I drag it above here. If you accidentally drag it below, don't worry, you can just drag like so. And this is my movie clip now, you can see it. There it goes. Doesn't look like a waterfall yet, but we haven't finished. So now I can drag, with this layer selected, I can drag this and put it into its relative position, which maybe is about there. That looks quite nice. Okay, that's that done. Right, so now I want to right hand click on this, go to blending mode and go to add. And now it's lightened it, but it looks a bit bright and there's no motion blur. So now I'm going to come up to effect and I'm going to come down to blur and sharpen and go directional blur, and this is the direction that it will be blurring in. And if you watch this as I move the blur length slider along, as you can see, it's now blurred in that direction. If it's a little bit off, you might want to move it. There we go, that's perfect. And to add another layer to this, I'm going to go into Effects and go to Generate, and then I'm going to click Ramp. And hopefully click OK. It just adds a slight ramp in there, dropping it down. So that's that. So now I could duplicate this. So I'm going to click this layer and I'm going to press Ctrl C, and then I'm going to press Ctrl V, and I've duplicated it. And now I can move this across into another area. And as you can see, you're starting to get this effect over it all now. And with this one, I might change the angle a little bit on the direction, and I might also take the blur length down a little bit, so it's just a little bit different to the other one. And you can keep repeating those across the model. Now at the moment the problem I've got is they're running exactly the same speed, so all I can do is I can grab this top layer and just drag it, so now they'll run different, so the clip length starts at different points, so it'll give the illusion that it's running at different speeds. So now I can come in and import my next one, which I've got a waterfall test 1, which is like a stream. Here it is. This one was done with slightly different settings, but it will do exactly the same job, and I'll bring that in there. And this one's this one's like a stream, so I'm going to have it sort of coming off here, which will look quite nice. Drag that down onto the top layer, put him roughly in position, which is about there, and do the same thing. Just go to blending mode, go to add, blending mode, add, which sometimes takes it a while to update. And then I go to my effects, I go to blur, directional blur, and blur length. Might take this down a bit more. And then I go to effect and I generate a ramp. I just leave the ramp, darkening it down a little bit more. And as you can see, straight away it's changed it considerably. And of course you can duplicate that if you wanted to as well. So I could go Control Copy, Control V, and then I could move this into a different area, say here. Might look nice going along there. I could also scale it if I wanted to add a sort of like small rivulets. Move this away so it doesn't run at the same speed. And I can copy and duplicate again. Then I can move this to another area, say just kind of over here. Yeah, probably here is quite nice. And then I could also take the opacity down, just because it's just a bit too light next to all those other colours. So I'll just bring that down. And that gives me this effect. So remember, when it hits here, it's just going to jolt back, so or it's going to finish. So you need to repeat these if you wanted to. So I'm going to take my animation to this point, which is 1.14. So I go to my composition settings. I think it's doing this funny thing because I've got Camtasia working as well. So I want it as 1.14. So I put that in there and just click OK. And now I know it will take me to the end. Okay, so that's good. Right, now let's add a rain effect to the overall composition. So I'm going to come to my beautiful JPEG there, and I'm going to come to Effects, and I'm going to come to Simulation, and I'm just going to select the CC Rain. And now you can see it's added the rain in there. And you can play around with the angle and all these sort of things. The angle's kind of good. Maybe the opacity should be down a little bit. And you can add more, you can add less. I like it to be subtle. You can have a bit of angle variation in there. The drop size, a bit smaller. On the source depth. And that's it. And now what we do is we click in there and we go to Composition, Make Movie. You get your render settings up here. So I've got it coming out as an AVI. You can hit lossless there, and you can change this to another format if you want to. I'm going to leave it as an AVI. And then obviously click there and say where it's going to go out to, and I hit render. It will render these frames out, and it will have done it. So I would say with this kind of a picture you might want to add more raindrop, more waterfalls down here and at the back and over here, and just build a library of them and then keep them in a folder with special effects that you can just reuse them each time. So it's a great way to use NParticles in Maya really quickly, creating some special effects without actually having to buy keyed video or any of that sort of stuff. You can get video. There's lots of companies that do videos that you can just drag straight in. I'll just show you quickly and then we'll have a look at that video we just created. So if I import and then I go to File, on my desktop I've got an Essentials pack, and I'll just pick one of these, Puffy Smoke, and that'll appear in here. Now if I come back to here and I drag this down onto the top, actually this layer here, I can put this effect. So this looks like mist rising from here. I could add another filter to it, blending mode. It's actually already on light, so I probably would want to go in. It's too blue this, so I need to do some color corrections. So I'd go into color correction and color balance. Actually it's just grayscaled, so I probably come down to hue and saturation, and I just drag the saturation off. Yeah, so I can just adjust these settings, although I needed to select that layer to add the effect to it. So here's our hue and saturation. So by taking the saturation, I've made it a bit better there. So there you've got a lovely mist coming up, running through the animation. And that's using stock footage. So I'll render this out and you can see the full effect of everything then. That's finished. So also remember to save this off. So before I come out, I'll just hit the save and put it into waterfall. Call it waterfall. And there we go. So now I can close this, and I've got my two renders now that we created. Our first one without the smoke effect. So this is what we got. Let it run through once to get the speed up. Here we go. So that's the sort of thing. There, bit of problem, should have brought it down a bit more, but you get the idea. Gives it pretty realistic effect. Now let's have a look at the one with the smoke effect, or the mist effect. Again, I should have pulled that smoke down, but you get the idea. You've got like smoke coming up, or mist, water mist coming up, vapor coming up from the waterfall, just by using that stock footage there. So I hope you've enjoyed this course, and it's going to help you. There's thousands of uses for doing this sort of thing, and just remember also that you can create fire effects, full water effects using particles, and I'll cover more of this, but this is the first of the speedy course lessons, and hopefully you've enjoyed it.